Now we'll move on with 31st case scenario. First question, Mr. Verma's loan account in the above case should be categorized. Okay. Where is Verma? Yeah, Verma had availed machinery loan but not paid EMI since past 100 days. Since he is not paying any interest, right? EMI, that's principal or interest, for 90 days, it should be an NPA. So it's an NPA. Should be treated as NPA because no recovery for more than 90 days. Option A is most appropriate answer. Which of the following loan facilities given to Mrs. Lata will be categorized as NPA? Where is Lata? Lata, one of the prime customers of the bank, had availed a CC facility and an education loan and a car loan. She had been regular with meeting EMI obligations except for the car loan since 4 months. You see, NPA was categorized as NPA individual basis, that is as per customer ID basis. If a customer had 2 to 3 loans, if had not paid for one loan, all the other loans of that customers become NPA. So all loans advanced become NPA. Option D is most appropriate answer. Kapoor's loan as per above case is, okay, where is Kapoor? Kapoor sanctioned a CC limit of 55 lakhs since past 3 years, no credits for 90 days. You see, when it's a cash credit for in a cash credit limit, that is CC loan, if no credits for 90 days, then it's an out of order case. You see here, outstanding balance remain continuously in excess of sanction limit or drawing power, and no credits continuously for 90 days, then it is a out of order case. So option D is most appropriate answer here. And fourth one is the loan sanctioned to cooperative society in above case should be categorized, okay, as an NPO standard for the purpose of provisioning of assets taken as like NPO standard income recognition bank. What they're talking about, where is the society here? Society's term loan 10 lakhs has been guaranteed by central government. Okay, if it's a loan that was guaranteed by a central government, then for the assets classification it is not an NPA, but for income classification it is an NPA. So standard NPA, so option C is most appropriate answer. We'll see fifth one. The loan sanctioned to Vishwas NGO in above case should be categorized as NPO standard for the purpose of provisioning of assets, but taken as NPO standard for purpose of income recognition. We'll see that NGO here. NGO loan for 7 lakhs has been guaranteed by state government. You see, when it is guaranteed by state government, it is treated as NPA, and even for the assets categories also, provision of assets. So both case it's an NPA. Option A is most appropriate answer. And now we'll move on to case scenario 32. First question. Fraud in the above case scenario has been committed by resorting to which of the following material misstatements identified during the audit? Okay, I think that fraud had happened on scrutiny of accounts. The following observation: Mr. X, the head accountant, seems to have colluded with cashier Y. Okay. And X has reported higher than usual profits in books of accounts because a part of his salary he's also received incentives based upon the profits earned. Okay. Because of incentives, he's doing fraud. Y cashier showed some bogus expenses which were not actually been incurred. The Arun estimates the fraud is 5 CR. Okay. Now we'll go with this. Fraud of which of the following misstatements identified during the audit? What they have not misappropriated the goods. There's no cash involved, but what they have done is they have used a higher profits and had created bogus expenses. So it's like fraudulent financial reporting because that's what they're talking about. There's no cash involved. So option A is most appropriate answer. The fraud is factor behind committing the fraud by Mr. X in the above cases. Incentives of pressure. Yes, he's receiving incentives, right? Option A is most appropriate answer. And how the fraud has been committed by X. What X had done, X had colluded with X and X reported higher profits, right? This is what financial reporting, manipulation of accounts. Yes. Option A is most appropriate. There is no instances that application of accounting principle was misapplication was done. So mostly manipulation of falsification of entries, etc. That's option A is most appropriate answer. And why resorted to defalcation of cash by what he had done? He issued some bogus expenditure, that is inflated cash payments. Option A is most appropriate answer. CA Arun found significant unexplained items on many reconciliations. This is an example of possible fraud due to. Okay. There were some unexplained items in reconciliation, that is, with discrepancies in accounting records. No. Reconciliations were done with the books to another confirmation records, not only with records. And some problematic relationship between auditor and management. No. And conflicting or missing evidence, we'll just put it aside. And other, we'll see the option here. They are talking about conflicting or missing evidence. So option C is most appropriate answer. And now we'll move on to 33rd case scenario. First question. Public money should not be utilized for the benefit of a particular person or a section of community or a person who is sanctioning the expenditure. Yeah, I think it's a cooperative society. They have two grants there, and the principles covered these were the principles that were covered with utilization and expenditure for that purposes comes under the proprietary audit. Option C is most appropriate answer. And second question, in case of cooperative societies, bad debts or irrecoverable losses for being written off as bad debts and reserve fund, they should certify as bad debts. Okay, they're asking about bad debt certification. Who has to do? Auditor has to do, and if the law is silent, the managing committee of the society has to do. We'll see the options here: auditor, managing committee of society when law is silent, yes. And or D, option A and B were the right answer. Option D is most appropriate answer. Now we'll see third question. As per LLP rules, statement of account and solvency shall be filed in. It should be filed in Form 8 with whom we have to file with registrar. Have to file with registrar within a period of 30 days from the end of 6 months. Was that Form 8 registrar and 30 days from the end of 6 months from the financial year end. Option D is most appropriate answer. And fourth one is LLP whose turnover does not exceed how many and contribution does not exceed if not required to get audited. They're talking about LLP audit limits. As soon as the turnover of LLP touches 40 CR or its contribution touches 25 CR, it has to done LLP audit. So option A is most appropriate answer. Which of the following matter is not required to be inquired by auditor? What are those? Whether loans or advances made on the basis of security have been properly secured, whether the terms were not prejudicial to the interest of the society or its members, yes, he has to inquire that. Whether transactions which are represented merely by book entries not prejudicial to interest of the society, yes, both have to be asked by the auditor. Whether personal expenditure had been charged to revenue account, yes. Whether loans advances shown as deposits. No such provision with regards to that. Option D is the appropriate answer, which is not required to be inquired. Now we'll move on with 34th case scenario. First question. Sampling risk can lead to two types of erroneous conclusion. One of them is when tests of control appear to be effective than they are actually are, which affects the audit effectiveness. You see, the difference between efficiency is and effectiveness is efficiency is with minimal cost. Effectiveness is getting desired result. So we want result, right? Audit effectiveness. So option B is the most appropriate answer, which affects these erroneous conclusions affect the audit effectiveness. So that lead to an inappropriate audit opinion. So option B is most appropriate answer. When auditor decides to select less than 100% population, that is known as audit sampling. Yes, that's the definition of audit sampling. Option A is most appropriate answer. Tolerable error is, you see, tolerable error is such error that maximum that the auditor is willing to accept it as a error in the sampling or the work that is we doing. We'll see the answer here. Tolerable error is the maximum, yes, maximum error in the population that the auditor is willing to accept. Yes, he's accepting maximum that much of error for the given sample size. So option D is most appropriate answer. Fourth one, the application of audit sampling is such that all sampling units have a chance of selection in order to draw conclusion about. The application of audit sampling is done on all sampling units of the entire population, not selective population or audited population. This is entire population. Why not universe? The difference between population and universe is all the data that the entity has, like with regards to the expenditure, revenue items, data, trade payables, or closing stock, contingent liabilities, litigation. Everything is what the universe is. But population is that one particular thing that all the data with the regards to only that particular thing. If you're auditing, like say data, then all the data that is related to data is entire population for that audit sampling process. There's a difference between the entire population and universe, and here option A is most appropriate answer. Fifth one, dash is a method of audit testing which is more scientific than entirely based on auditor's own judgment, and it involves use of mathematical laws and all. Whenever we find something that is scientific, it's obviously statistical sampling. Option A is most appropriate answer. And I want to tell you something, that the difference between cluster sampling and block sampling, there was a keyword kit in our series. Do check that out. And now we'll go with 35th case scenario. First one. Dash is a file containing records data that's comprised of audit documentation of a specific engagement, or when a file consists of audit documentation is audit file. Option A is most appropriate answer. This is the definition of audit file. Which of the following does not affect form, content, and extent of documentation? Yes, size and complexity, they do affect the size and form of the entity. Nature of the team, audit team who will perform the audit, no. Any audit team performs the audit documentation, doesn't affect with that. So option B might be the appropriate answer. We'll see the other. Risk of material misstatement, audit methodology and tools used. Yes. Option B is most appropriate answer. Varies with the audit team. All the things have to be the form, context, and extent of documentation do not get affected. Third one, if the exceptional circumstances, the auditor departs from the standards on auditing. Okay, the auditor has to perform audit as per standards on auditing, but there were some exceptional circumstances that he departs. Then what he have to write? He write about the reasons. Document the reasons for such departure. Yes. Document how alternate procedures were performed for achieving the objective. This also stand nice, good, and reasonable, and these might be the appropriate answer because both these stands true. We'll see the D. Auditor is not allowed to depart from essays. There's not a stringent rule. They were just like a recommendatory in nature. If they could do audit with, or they could achieve the objective of the auditor, they could use some alternative procedure. So option D is most appropriate answer. So the following is not true of working papers. Okay, they record the audit evidence to provide support the auditor's opinion. Yes, they assist in review of the audit work. Yes, it helps the audit engagement partner to review the work of the audit team. There's a direct aid. The aid is help in planning the audit. Yes, that's also true. They provide proof for correctness of financial statements. No, how do audit working papers provide proof for correct of financial statements? And D is most appropriate answer, which is not true with regards to working papers. Can CA Mr. Bean provide access to working papers to Income Tax Department during search and seizure? Yes, he could provide because it's required by law, right? So yes, option A stands true. Option A is most appropriate answer. And now we'll move on with case scenario 36. First question. For SQC1, what is the retention period of audit document? The retention period of audit documentation is 7 years, minimum 7 years. It should be not shorter than 7 years from the date of auditor's report. Option A is most appropriate answer. And question is, as a part of audit documentation, the auditor may consider it helpful to prepare and retain a summary that describes significant matters and how they were addressed. See, we have come across these MCQ like 3 to 4 times till now. It's an important thing. This is a definition of completion memorandum. Option B is most appropriate answer. How should auditor verify inventory was in custody with third party? Okay, the client's inventory was in with custody of third party. How could we verify the inventory? By asking a confirmation from third party. The options here: mandates of verify same physically, refusal lead to a disclaimer of it. Should perform other procedures like requesting confirmation from third party or inspecting documentation like warehouse receipts and to confirm and existing of inventory. This is most appropriate answer we are talking about, right? This audit is a behavioral science. You have to know how to act to different kinds of situation. When there was a limitation of scope in the audit, how you have to behave, and when there's a fraud that was asked, when there was any kind of internal controls was not in place. So you see, for all the common problems that we face in audit, how the auditor behaves. For this, the auditor has to perform other audit procedures, that is like confirmation request and all. Can be his most appropriate answer. the opinion of the auditor not to document materiality level correct. No materiality, when the auditor determine the materiality as per SS 320, he has to document it. What we have seen with regards to documentation part, what is the thumb rule there? What all the auditor does, he has to document. When he's determining materiality, he has to document that. No, that was wrong. As per SA 230, though they don't prescribe documentation, it should be documented as per SA 320. Yes. Option C is most appropriate answer because he determines materiality under SA 320. Fifth one, which among the following is not a factor for identification of any appropriate benchmark? The benchmark is like a item in the financial statement that he thinks while determining the materiality, or 20% on the benchmark, like if he is doing any kind of bad debts or any kind of things, 5% on the debtors balance, like that he would put benchmark on that and put materiality. So that data is benchmark. So elements of financial statement, yes. Volatility of the benchmark, yes. Entity's ownership structure, yes. Previous experience of audit with the entity, obviously yes. But this doesn't put track any financial information. It is like a non-financial information. What with regards to benchmark, it's mostly a numerical kind of thing for determining material. So I think option D would be wrong. Yes, option D is the appropriate answer. And now we'll move on with 37 case scenario here. First question. In initial stage of conducting audit of some private limited company, though I think Mr. W is auditor, decided to evaluate internal controls of the company. Okay, he wanted to evaluate the internal controls. Evaluation of internal control is very important part of audit report, audit evidence, audit documentation, audit program. It's an important part of audit program. They were at an initial stage of the audit in conducting the audit. You see, audit program is something, all the instructions or all the process, audit procedures that are required to do the audit. So evaluation of internal control is the audit process that has to be done in order to what form an opinion on the internal financial controls, whether they have any material weakness with regards to internal controls or not. Option D, audit program is most appropriate answer. And second one is the first team member of the team helping the auditor suggested a method according to which the number of instructions were required to be followed to collect information about the internal control. Okay, one team member suggested the number of instructions, like a number of instructions that were required to be followed to collect information and all. We'll see which method is a flowchart. Flowchart is most of like a diagrammatic or most of graphical representation, or not an instructions. Checklist is an based upon instructions. We'll keep that aside. Narrative record is something to describe a particular activities that were done by an individual or an organization activities. It's like a fixed format. There's nothing to do more about it. It is you see and then you write that. It's mostly the same. And questionnaire, it would be more suitable when they have asked as a series of questionnaires or series of questions. It is mostly used while doing inquiry of the management or doing inquiry of the or some in-house legal personnel or employees. So as far as this number of instruction, it is a checklist. Option B is most appropriate answer. And the third one is the second team member suggested a method which complete description of internal control which operation is recorded. This method is known as narrative record. It's like a describing a particular activity. It's a narrative record. Option A is most appropriate answer. And the third team member asked about the method gathering information so as a graphical format. It should be presented in a graphical form. As we know, when it's a graphical form, what we have to, that's a flowchart. Option C is most appropriate answer. The fourth team member was suggested as method which is a series of questions. Series of question is obviously a questionnaire. Option A is most appropriate answer. And now we'll see 30th case scenario. A lot of numbers here. First question, closing stock of 11 lakhs 5,000 was incorrectly recorded in books of accounts of company for a 11 lakhs 45,000. You see, they have inflated the closing stock with 40,000. The difference between is 40,000. They have inflated the closing stock for 40,000. What happens to profit? So since closing stock was inflated, the profit would be also get overstated. So that is an overstatement of 40,000. Option D is most appropriate answer. Inventory of the company must be valued at what? You see what it has to be valued at. It has to be valued at lower of cost or NRV, whichever is lower. Lower of cost or NRV. That is option B is most appropriate answer. And the amount of 15,500 was received in cash from one of the trade receivables. What it has to be presented in cash flow statements. Miscellaneous activities, no. Operating activities, yes. Since this is the money which have received through sale of stock in trade, right? So that's an operating activity. If we have invested some amount as an FD or we have invested in some kind of equity, the interest or the what like the dividend that we receive, it would be comes under the investing activities. If we have given any loan and we get interest from it, it's a financing activity. Since we have got the sale amount, the sale of what stock in trade, that's an operating activity. If we have sold the asset and then we have got that, that's always an investing activity, because assets were investments and stock in trade is operating activity. Option B is most appropriate answer. For the purpose, a purchased machinery for payment of 16,600 was done by the company in cash. Okay. The accounting transaction must be presented in what? Since it's an asset, machinery is an asset, it's an investing activity. Outflow of cash. Option A is most appropriate answer. During the financial year, the fair value of the equipment was more than the carrying value of the equipment. That is, the fair value is more than the carrying value, so we need to do the impairment testing and all. The carrying value was lesser than the fair value, no problem. If it is more, then there exists a problem. And no depreciation has to be issued, or sorry, depreciation has to be charged irrespective of that, the fair value. So depreciation would be charged as the carrying amount is less than fair value. No, not because of that, because the residual value is less than the carrying amount. So option D is most appropriate answer. And now we'll go with 39th case scenario. First question is here. Expenses incurred on installation of new machinery by the company should be treated as installation expenditure is a capital expenditure, because which helps the machinery to be ready to use. So it's a capital expenditure. But if it's a regular maintenance or repairs, it could be a revenue expenditure unless it is it's a overhaul expenditure. So option B, capital expenditure, is a most appropriate answer. And expenses incurred on normal maintenance. Yes, normal maintenance is a revenue expenditure. So option D is most appropriate answer. In the books of accounts of the company, building should be treated as, okay, they're asking whether depreciable or tangible, intangible. Okay, building, yes, it's a depreciable asset. Second thing, whether it's tangible or intangible, it's a tangible asset. So option A is most appropriate answer. In example 4, okay, what's example 4? For example 4, the appropriate authority of the company had not taken steps for assessing the impairment loss of the machinery. Okay, they haven't checked the impairment. Then they are asking who is that appropriate authority. You see, as we know that we have discussed very many times from long time, that the preparing of financial statement is the responsibility of the management. Management has to prepare the financial statement and they were responsible for that. So what they're asking is members or employees, management, or any one director. It is a management. So option C is the most appropriate answer. And fifth one is the method of depreciation used by the company must be allocate its amount of depreciation of any tangible fixed asset in a systematic manner over its useful life. Over its useful life. Might be the economic life of the asset would be higher than the useful life of the company, but the depreciation would be allocated by the useful life of the asset that was used by the company. Option D is most appropriate answer. And now we'll move on with 40th case scenario. First question. Company's balance sheet shows building of a carrying amount 5 lakhs and auditor gathers evidence about company's ownership and control. Ownership and control, it is with regards to the rights and obligations. The assertion is rights and obligations for the ownership and control. What they have to check? They have to check the title deeds, etc. So all three goes in a place, and option D is most appropriate answer. and that one salary that was given not accounted properly in the books of account. It was shown on payment basis only. You see, the expenditure that was incurred in the current year has to be charged to the P&L in the current year only. That's what the accrual concept talks about. But they were following the payment basis. That is, they have not accounted this salary that was paid to the Y that was incurred in the current financial year. So the violation of assertion is the completeness of the their salary assertion. Option A is most appropriate answer. And relating and tallying information obtained from audit evidence internally and externally is an example of dash evidence as observed in the above case. Okay, what they are doing, they are just comparing and tallying the audit evidence that was obtained from internal source and external source. Corroborative is something that supports. Supplementary is something that was additional. Contrasting, there is no word with regards to audit evidence for that. Contradictory is something that's opposite. And with regards to here, auditing the books followed the documents and they were shown in the historical cost and prepaid expenses were not accrued, not accounted as per accrual concept and all. So these were like mostly of a contradictory nature. The books of accounts of this and that would contradict, right? Internal and explicit. So option D is most appropriate answer. They were contradictory as they are not following the accrual concept. Which assertion would Vinum find the most common among the income statement and the balance sheet? Completeness. Completeness is the only thing, only assertion that is common in both balance sheet and P&L account. I think we have already discussed with regards to some essay, right? While revising standards, existence and valuation with regard to balance sheet. C is for both P&L and balance sheet. Sufficiency of audit evidence. What are the adjectives of audit evidence? It is sufficient and appropriate. Appropriate is mostly like the quality and the relevance to the work that we're to the audit evidence or the session that work we are collecting. Sufficiency is the number, the quantity. So the quantity here is mostly, they have changed the word that's to quantum. Quantum is also the quantity. Option B is most appropriate answer with regards they are referring sufficiency to the quantity. Option B is most appropriate answer. First question, 41st case scenario. State whether appointment of CA Rajendra is correct or not. CA Rajendra is brother of one of the directors of A Limited, to whom we had appointed as an auditor. He's a relative for the director, so it's not correct. It is incorrect. Yes, it's incorrect as per company law, as he's relative of the director and not allowed to be appointed as an auditor. Option B is most appropriate answer. Advise the company regarding the course of action of the company, which have to follow the court case. With regards to court case, what it had, the company had a dispute with one customer who took company to court, and it's probable chances that company will have to shell out 50 lakhs as compensation. Okay, shell out is taking and putting it somewhere. So 50 lakhs are the probable chances, but they are saying that it will be finalized in 2022 for the year ended 2022. But as there exists a probable chances and there exists, it's an adjusting event, so the financial statements have to be affected for this, as the event already exists by the year end, so they have to create a provision. So option A is most appropriate answer. And third one is, what is the action that company has to take with regards to dividend declared? Okay, when they have their dividend, they have declared the dividend on 10th April 2021. It's a non-adjusting event, as the event of declaring dividend was not there by the end of the March for the year end. So it need not create a liability for that, but they have to disclose the amount of the dividend. You see, disclosures have been asked or have been being tested by the ICAI for the for the MTP and the RTPs two times, and it's an important portion or important topic for May 2023 examinations. And we'll discuss that in the audit marathon or frantic hours. That's a topic where we do not put so much of effort, right? So the ICAI is testing that. No problem, we'll learn that. Mostly disclosures what relates to the cash and with regards to some assets, etc. We'll discuss that in a frantic hour. That's after you complete your advanced accounting examination, the evening 7 p.m. We'll discuss all the important topics that were relevant for the May 2023 examination that were asked and repeated most widely in the MTPs and RTPs, and with regards to some ABC trends from the past question papers. Okay, and for this here is they have to disclose the dividend. Option B is most appropriate answer, and fourth one is state the disclosures again a disclosure question with regards to long-term borrowings. Okay, they have taken some long-term borrowings. What all they have to disclose? Security that they have given, the fixed assets there was secured against in the loan, or that was guaranteed by the director. Okay, and the repayment terms of the loan. All the four have to be disclosed. Option A is most appropriate answer. And state whether which of the following statement is true with respect to the intangible assets of the company. Okay, what the company had some intangible assets systems. Okay, some the company drew designs of one product and product constituted 90% of sales of the company. Oh, very good. The design of the product uh, has been increased every year for the next 5 years, and the company booked the designs for a company at a value of 1 CR as intangibles at its cost. Okay. As the recognition was right, intangible was correctly booked by the company. Yes. Option A is most appropriate answer. No, not wrongly booked, not wrongly booked. No, not wrongly booked. Option A, intangible assets were correctly booked by the company. And now we'll move on with 42nd case scenario here. First question, according to Section 5 of Central Act. Okay, what they're talking about? Okay, it's a cooperative society. Fine. It's a cooperative society. What's the maximum percentage of total number of shares and what is the maximum value of shareholding? Yesterday in our monetary limits, what we have learned, that is 20% of total number of shares or 1000 rupees. Okay, we'll see the options that 25% no, 20% 5000 no, 20% or a shareholding of 1000. Option D is most appropriate answer. And what, as per section 29, the best tea house cannot give loan to a person other than members. Yes, it's other than member, and with a special sanction of the register to another registered society, not to the relatives of the members. Okay, make a note out of it. To another registered society with a prior sanction, a special sanction of the registrar. Mostly they give loans to their members only. Option B is most appropriate answer. And third one is overdues. That's for the period from, okay, as we have what we have seen with regards to the time limits of video also in actually it had been happen to come all the limits in this case scenario only. What's this? It's 6 months to 5 years and more than 5 years. If you haven't watched that monetary limits and time limits video, it was just around 15 to 20 minutes. It would be very helpful for you to answer the MCQs portion like this. It would be very helpful for you to if you do watch the day before the examination, it will be very helpful to retrieve all the information. So quick, do watch that. Don't forget watching that. And the PDFs were in the Telegram channel. Also go and check that. And okay, C, for this coming back, it's C, option C, that's 6 months to 5 years and more than 5 years is the overdues classification for a cooperative society. Option C is most appropriate answer. And the auditor report few transactions. What are those few transactions? Few transactions of personal profiteering by members of management committee. The management was having some profitable, doing some self-profiting transactions. They were noticed during the audit. To whom they have to report? They have to report to the registrar of the cooperative societies. Option A is most appropriate answer. And fifth one is mistakes having an impact on profitability of the society were pointed out by the auditor, like those few transactions, as it's a consequential effect on the financial position of the society. As in which of the following submissions was this information included? In part 1, part 2, or schedules or audit memos? It would be included in part 1 of the audit report. Okay, option A is most appropriate answer. And now we'll move with 43rd case scenario. So they have given two statements. We have to say which is correct and which is incorrect. Statement 1, government audit provides public accounting of operational management, program and policy aspects of public administration as well as accountability of officials administering them. Yes, it's mostly right. And government audit is equipped with and intended to function as investigating agency. No, it is not an investigating agency. So statement 1 is right. So the most appropriate answer is option A is the most appropriate answer, and dash is conducted of to ensure that the various programs, schemes, projects were large financial expenditure have been incurred and run economically and yield results expected by them. This is the definition of the performance audit. Performance audit is something that see you run whether the expenditure was economical is with lower with a lower cost and yielding the expected results. That's what they're talking about as a performance audit. And with regards to while conducting the audit against provision of funds, the statutory auditor has to check what he has to check. He has to check what he has to check with regards to the audit against provision of funds, whether the funds that were which for it was granted have been expended for that purpose and it had expended within that limits or not. He has to check that with regards to the audit against provision of funds. Each item that was with regards to the competent authority, no, the expenditure incurred for that purpose, yes, for the purpose, and the expenditure does not exceed for the appropriation made. Option B is most appropriate answer. It's mostly like the types of audits and all their definitions, right? If you know the definitions, you could easily write that. But with regards to the part of expenditure, that covers the scrutiny of expenditure incurred on the construction of stockyard by the company, which it's considered as infructuous and avoidable by CA. Okay, they're talking about the scrutiny of the expenditure. What does that talk about? It's a proprietary audit. Option A is most appropriate answer. And while conducting the audit of receipts, okay, what are the areas that were covered under the audit of receipts? Were all the revenues have been realized and credited X, that was covered. Option one is included, and whether adequate checks were imposed to ensure prompt detection and investigation of irregularities of refunds or like any kind of omissions or any kind of issues of refunds, etc. Also, as they were a part of refunds, a part of receipts. So this also includes in the audit of receipts. Okay, whether the expenditure incurred has been for the purpose for which grant and appropriation has been made provided. This is audit against provision of funds, right? And whether so it's not under audit of receipts. Whether the various schemes that were executed, their operations conducted economically and the results were expected or not. That is what with regards to performance audit. So first two statements were right. So 1 and 2 were right. Statements 1 and 2 are correct. So option B is most appropriate answer. And now we'll move on with 44th case scenario. First question. As the management of the company had given a written representation regarding responsibility for prevention detection of material misstatement or misstatements on account of fraud and error. See, this is the responsibility that was given by the management through a written representation, and what the auditor has to do. Auditor should rely on the management and without wasting time and resources toward direction and detection of fraud and error. No, it's not. The written representation will just have to be. It's a corroborative evidence to support. It is not the auditor has to exhibit the professional skepticism throughout the audit. He should not rely solely on the management. Should not consider management representation as a substitute for obtaining sufficient and appropriate audit evidence. Yes, it's just a supporting, not a substitute, and design its audit procedures accordingly. So option B is most relevant, and we'll see C should not rely on representations given by the management, should obtain from those charged with governance. No, should concentrate and the accounting policies of the company for the prevention and detection of fraud. No, not this. Option B is most appropriate answer. It is that it's not a substitute. It's mostly the same. We have seen that. And second is the inclusion of dummy workmen in the workman list. I think they have inflated the workman's so to inflate the salaries or wages expenditure, which amounts to The auditor amounts to what? Suppressing cash receipts? No. Or casting wrong total? No. Inflating cash payment? Yes. It's inflating the salaries or the wages that were being paid to the workmen. Option C is most appropriate answer. And third one, with respect to the fraud which has been already reported by a cost accountant, what is the responsibility for this auditor now? What his auditor has to do? Has no responsibility? No. The cost accountant has detected and statutory auditor should not interfere? No. Ramesh should review the steps that were taken by the management? Yes. And should report the fraud. Is not satisfied if he was not satisfied with the steps or the remedial action that were taken by the management and perform such additional procedures. This is what we are expecting. The auditor has to do. This is mostly a behavioral science. This is what auditor has to do. So option C is most appropriate answer. And say Ramesh should obtain written representation. Not at all. He has to perform audit procedures. Okay. And what refers to the events or condition that indicate an incentives or pressure to commit fraud were fraud risk factors. Option A is most appropriate answer. All the list of the fraud risk factors and all. And they have given two statements. The risk of the auditor not detecting a material misstatement resulting from employee fraud is greater than management fraud. No, it's the other way around. That is, the risk of auditor not detecting material misstatement resulting from a management fraud is greater than employee fraud, because the reasons were also discussed in the relevant SEs with regards to the overriding of the controls that they have continuously monitor the accounting process and all. So it's, the risk was more in with case of the management fraud than of the employee fraud. So statement 1 is wrong. Statement 2 is the risk of not detecting a material misstatement resulting from fraud is higher than the risk that was not detecting from a error. Yes. But what's the difference between fraud and error? The intention. Okay. When the fraud was done, it was mostly curated. It was very well designed and planned so that it would not be identified by the any other third parties. That's why the risk for not detecting the misstatement due to fraud is higher than of the error. Error is something that was unintentional, like a clerical error or a classification error can easily be identified. So option second statement is right. Yeah, option B is most appropriate answer. Only statement 2 is correct. And now we'll move on with 45th case scenario. First question is CH and his team, I think the auditor, is carefully watched the whole process of counting of something stock, I guess, by the employees of the company. This is example of what they are doing. They are doing what they are doing. They were observing. Yes, they were not doing any external confirmation. They were not asking any questions. They are not inspecting. Inspecting and observations. Yes, there was a difference between that. Both were saying inspecting the books of accounts, documents. You have to inspect the books, inspect the documents. You have to observe the process. So you have to observe the process, inspect the books of account. That's what the adjective you have to use for the verb that you're doing, for the action that you're doing. So then this is a counting process. So process goes with the observation. Option B is most appropriate answer to verify accuracy of valuation of the stock. And auditor did the calculation, what they are doing, analytical process, inquiry, inspection, recalculation. They are again calculating, so it's a recalculation. Option D is most appropriate answer. And CH, with help of his team members, obtained information from experienced people in manufacturing business of such wooden doors. These experienced people provided some information, what they are doing. Are they doing inspecting any documents? No. Are they performing any kind of procedures? Any procedures with respect to any kind of internal control procedures? Inquiry, yes, they were asking the information for the experienced people. So option C is most appropriate answer. Anyways, investigation does not comes in the ambit of audit. And CH and his team members are in detail checked and evaluated the books of accounts and the relevant documents. What's an example? It's inspection, as it's a they were what they're doing, they're checking and evaluating the books of accounts and documents. Whenever they do anything with regards to the documents, they are inspecting. Option A is most appropriate answer. Reperformances, they're or doing the internal control procedure that were usually done in the entity. And recalculation is like calculating again the depreciation and all. Investigation, it's not out of scope. And fifth one and last one is asking for written confirmations with regard to account balance from debtors and creditors is an example of that taking external confirmations. That's external confirmation. Option D is most appropriate answer.